it's always reluctant to come to these, these things, because it feels like it's been here thousands of times, the car. But then, as soon as I arrive, the real passenger comes out. Yeah. As the driving is going on, it thinks it's the passenger. But then when it arrives, then the passenger comes out, and then the Toyota's put in its place. Yeah, it's funny. It happens all the time. The only reason why I can come here is because I've never come here, really. If I thought I was doing this, I would have found tons of reasons not to come up here to Vancouver. I mean British Columbia. Yeah. So it just sort of comes out. It's still enthusiastic after all these years, because it's really I feel that the topics some of us are interested in are valid, but the approach is misdirected. Yeah. I don't believe you can study what you are. I don't believe you can know what you are. I don't believe you can experience what you are. I don't believe you can have an understanding of what you are. I believe you can experience what you're not. You can understand what you're not. You can know what you're not. And you can study what you're not, with the hopes that you would come to a very sudden conclusion that could last forever. I'm not that. Yeah? But I think the direction that a lot of us took, innocently, I believe, because there was an irritable restlessness and discontent in my life, seemingly, and I wanted some relief, and I had tried a lot of what was on offer, you know, and usually spirituality is like the last house on the block, and then you get there, and in my head, I thought it was a nobility to spirituality with that, you know, allow it to rise above the other activities, which I was sorely mistaken about. But, and there's that yearning or hope to sort of get a stabilized relief. Yeah? And then when it doesn't seem to work, then you imagine maybe it's working, or you hope that it's going to work. And then finally you start blaming yourself for not doing enough. You think, if I would have just stayed at that master's feet another 5 minutes, or kissed it a few more times, or walked around that statue the 112th time, and whatever. And then I remember I did a talk outside of Boston, and a guy had been at some program where they had people stand in one posture, and they said, if you can stand for 17 minutes, something will happen. And the person did it and nothing happened, and he says, what should I have done? I said, you should have stood for 18 minutes. Yeah? Like more gets added on to it. If it doesn't seem to produce it, more will, you know, or it'll take longer. But it's all constructed in time and all that. And like, you can pretty much find anything that's not you here, but you can't apply that drive to find to what you are, because you are what you're looking for. That's the fundamental flaw in all of it, yeah? So, and it's not a great career choice, really. I mean, it would be lovely to have you here, and then we could do exercises, do some breathing, and then I'd let you meditate and go and have a latte, and you'd pay me tons of money, and you'd say, I'm on a retreat with this person, but I'm not on the retreat. Very rarely, if you go on a retreat with a master, they're sitting with you at the meditation hall, they're having a latte or raw desserts. They know better. They know 14 hours isn't going to do it. So, all right, back to what I was attempting to say. Selfing. So selfing is a verb. It's an act of being identified as a self. Yeah? And it's not like the act is, I'm in the act of being identified, and then there's something called self. There's no self. The act of being identified as a self is an activity. Yeah? And if you go into the thought system, it's in the act of being identified as a self. It thinks you're a thing, and you're a doer, and you're a haver, and you're the thinker, and you're the feeler. It just assumes it. It doesn't really investigate. It notices thoughts, and then that noticing is used to imply you must be the thinker. These are private thoughts. No one's having them. No one's even noticing I'm having them, so they must be mine. So this sense of ownership binds you to what's happening. Yeah? So now, let's say life's happening when we're young and we're not in an abusive situation, and then slowly it turns into life's happening to me, which is an interpretation handed to us by the mental process. Yeah? Literally. So the act of being identified as a self never culminates. See, this is the agitation. Like there's a great Zen statement in Faith Mind, a very famous Zen treatise, which is, you can't use activity to produce stillness. That would be activity. This is like the Chinese thumb torture. Yeah? You want to get out, but your wanting to get out is in. Yeah? So how do you get slick enough to get out? Yeah? When every time you try to get out, it reinforces the idea you're in. You can't seem to take yourself out of the equation. And like in recovery, we have a statement, first you got to quit playing God. Okay? So what's that which is playing God? The head, isn't it? I mean, what tells you what the day's going to be like when you wake up? Your elbow doesn't inform you of it. The narration up there tells you, oh, it's going to suck, or, you know, I'm never going to get what I want. It pontificates completely. But then if you're believing it, it produces an effect. Yeah? You may not get up. You may just roll over and drink 8 lattes, and then, you know, and then you actually prove yourself right in a way. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. So it says, quit playing God. Okay, so what happens if that which hears that message, quit playing God, is that which is playing God? So that which is playing God hears, hey, you've got to quit playing God. So now it kind of tries to quit playing God, but isn't that playing God? And and it can go on ad infinitum. There's not going to be one point where it can quit playing God as God trying to quit playing God. This is exactly what's happening. Yeah? There's an identification with an idea that we're not, and then there's an assumption we are that idea, then we see everything from that idea's point of view, and then it provokes an action or a reaction. And now we start looking for what we are, which is impossible. It's the main deterrent. How can you find what's looking through looking? If you use what's looking to look for what's looking, you'll never fucking find it. It's that simple.
I love it.
Yeah? But if you see the you that's looking isn't you, then what happens? You get the hit of what's looking. It doesn't, like St. Francis has a statement, what's looking is what you're looking for. Quite simple and direct, yeah? What's looking is what you're looking for. It doesn't say what's looking and then 50 pages of requirements that you have to meet to be that which you're looking for. It says what's looking. It doesn't say who's looking. What's looking is what you're looking for. End of story. It's not a huge book, and there's no commentary about it. It's a simple, direct invitation. Then there's a great master, Huang Po, old Chinese Zen master. He says you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha. Simple as that. You can't use light to seek light. You can't use mind or awareness, let's say, to seek awareness. And here at this meeting, and thanks for everyone to come, this is sort of like a spiritual shoe store, and we're going to put out some shoes. And you may have an idea what shoe you're looking for, like you're expecting that to go on a heavy-duty spiritual journey. But I'm not listening to you, really. I'm just going to bring out shoes. And I'm putting them out there. And one of them is, you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha. And now if that resonates for you, then wear that shoe and see what happens. Yeah? That's what happened with me. I started to hear this message. It was like an unspoken yes. It's never stopped reverberating. And these statements actually explained most of my life. It was like a giant, just one sentence captured almost all the themes of all my behaviors were captured by a simple statement in recovery, which is self can't get out of self. I've been trying to get out of self as a self. And people come to these talks, these satsangs, and they want to have an experience of their own absence. They want to be there to experience their own absence. It's not going to happen. And you're not going to get it either. You're not going to get anything here. That's the good news. You're not real, literally. And I know, I'm telling you, I'm not talking to you about it. Because talking to you about mind doesn't go anywhere. Talking to mind about you goes somewhere. And you may not believe it or not, you've gotten the spiritual subpoena just coming in this room. Yeah? Mind already knows what's going to be said. And I'm thrown in that mind. See, I know the mental state. Its ability to claim and deflect is unbelievable. So if you hear, the first video we ever did was the famous story of the sheep and the lion. Yeah. So there's a lioness, and she has a cub, and they're roaming around, and the lioness gets killed, and the cub is orphaned. And so the cub is roaming around, doesn't know what's going on, doesn't even know what it is, and he sees a herd of sheep. And so he goes towards the sheep. Now the sheep know it's a lion, and they get a little anxious, but they realize quickly that the lion doesn't even know it's a lion. So he ingratiates himself into the herd, and he tries to be the best sheep he can be. It's a little bit of irritable, restless, and discontent because he's not a sheep. But he starts going and listening to people, you know, complain about who's going to be the next sweater next year, and he gets his hair curled, and he's trying to learn how to baa, you know, and he marries another sheep. Their offspring look a little strange, but they just rationalize that way. And he becomes a big sheep elder, and, you know, but he's very unsatisfied in a way. And then one day an old lion comes into the area of the savannah and sees the herd, and chases it for food, and it sees the other lion, and it thinks the lion is joining it on the hunt, but it suddenly realizes the lion's running with the sheep. So it veers off, grabs the lion, and the lion rolls on its back and goes, "Please, Mr. Lion, I'm just a humble sheep, don't eat me." The old lion's a little perplexed, just grabs the young lion, brings it over to the water hole, sticks both of their heads out. The young lion sees their reflection, and it gets it. And then the old lion goes roar, and the young lion roars. It never roared at this point, but it doesn't have to go through 3 months of roaring lessons. Because, see, and this is the weirdest thing. What happens is, if you take the story to the next level, so here's these sheep, and this lion as a sheep, that are disgruntled with the sheep life. They're a little bit, you know, they want to kick some ass or something like this. So then they find out, they get a book about lions, and they read about it, and they really dream of having these attributes. Yeah? And so then they find pictures of lions, and they clean them up and put them on the wall and get candles, and they start going to see the lions. I'm a lion, or I'm going to become a lion, like a lion. And then they have roaring lessons, and everyone's, "Oh, you're doing much better. It sounds like a sheep." You know, no, but it would sound, and in their group it's very noble, yeah. But the fact is, they're a lion, yeah. There's only an identification as the sheep. But what happens is the identification as the sheep becomes the starting point, and so when you hear the message, "You're a lion," it doesn't get through to the lion. The sheep programming catches it and neuters the message, and then it becomes I can become like a lion. And the worst thing a lion can do to find out it's a lion is to start to become like a lion. It can go on for freaking ever, yeah? So the point is, I don't want to hear how things, what is. I want to see about what's not. Because when I was a kid, Catholic school, they would say the 3 qualities of God, which is it's omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, all-powerful, all-knowing, everywhere. And I used to be, why am I not running into it? You know, I seem to be somewhere. Why am I not sensing this presence? And then you hear these messages. Some people here have probably gone to 500 satsangs or logged 800 hours of YouTubes. Yeah? What's the problem? How difficult would it for the Buddha to hear that it's the Buddha by saying someone goes, "Hey, Paul, aka the Buddha, you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha." How long would it take for the Buddha to get that? But if you go through Paul and go, "Hey, Paul, you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha," it screws Paul up completely. It ruins his Buddhist practice and shit like that. But this message isn't to you. It's to what you are. And I want to just inform what you are, what it's not. Because if what you are sees what it's not, you're going to get relief from the bondage of self. It's just that freaking simple. Yeah, and in my experience here, for years of entertaining it, the greatest beneficiary, because awareness, there's no value in awareness knowing it's aware. There's value in being awake here where it can seem not to be so. That's the only value it has. And where does the value get expressed? Here in this. The action figure will travel later. It doesn't say it's going to change the action figure's life. It means it may get cancer, it may lose a job, it may get married, but it's going to travel lighter with whatever life has in store for it. And after years of traveling lighter, you come to the conclusion, what more do you want? Yeah? That's what you're truly looking for. Your physical ass does not want to sit and meditate 14 hours. It doesn't. It doesn't want to go into a cold cave in Tibet. It doesn't. It doesn't want to eat rice porridge for 4 weeks. It doesn't want to do it. You're dragging it all around with this mental fixation. And the body is never going to become spiritual. And the spirit is never going to become spiritual because it already is. So for me, and this is my humble thing, some of you may have like a $20,000 spiritual budget for a year. You have to go on 4 retreats, all this, that. If this message works for you, tithe at least 25% of what you save to me. Send me. I'll give you a post office box. If I save you $10,000 in expenses, spiritual expenses, at least throw me $3,000. Wouldn't it be worth it if I would save you all that time and trouble? And I believe humbly that in spiritual society, there should be a committee that goes over your applications for retreats. I think a lot of people have done way too many retreats. 30 retreats, there should be someone that calls you and like the soup Nazi in the sign, oh, no retreat. Yeah. It's true, and really, like, I'm a drug addict, you know, came from addiction and stuff. But see, spiritual addiction is trippy because there is no intervention. No one's going to come up to you and say, put the DVD down, stop, get out of satsang. They're going to let you keep on freaking coming. Yeah, and they keep on getting paid. And they know damn well there's nothing that has to be done. And when it hits you in a strong manner, it will inform you that it's always been this way. So none of what we believe to be so and strong enough to obscure the truth to us is really true. Because the only thing that has made the obscuring seem real is reality. We are the obscuring factor. How could reality be fooled by an illusion unless it was in cahoots with it? And this is the situation. So what happens is, you realize you don't really freaking want to be free. You want to have a nice pair of pants. You know, you want to have a good meal. And then it's okay. Suddenly, a huge amount of acceptance floods into you being Paul by realizing you're not. It's a trip. Because if I saw where I am, this is what drove me to seek, is not wanting to be like this. I wanted to be special. I did not want to be a herd member. I thought I was different. Yeah. This has brought me in a long circular route to being I'm like a Midwest American. I'm very wholesome now. It's unbelievable. I have no spiritual bone in my body. I'm never spending any moment looking for what can't be found. I'm not trying to get into the moment because I realize you can't be out of the moment. You've never been out of any moment, ever. It looks like you've gotten into the moment, but it's not how you got in the moment. You got in the moment. The experience is you're always in the moment, but it wasn't produced. It became stabilized by realizing you can't be out of the moment. And conversely, you're not trying to get out of self. There's a realization you were never in self. That's the relief. The relief is prior to the problem, not after it. You don't get relief after the problem. The relief is prior to it. Yeah? The relief is prior to the bondage. It's an inherent state. Yeah? And it hasn't been obscured truly. We have, all of us in this room, have been exhibiting awakeness all day. Seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching. None of us went to a seeing class this morning, did we? Let's practice seeing. You know, I'm not breaking out of a sweat to see. Yeah? Because being something doesn't exhibit any thought or effort. I just don't understand why we believe thought and effort would take us to that which exhibits no thought or effort. I just can't see it. It just seems so absurd. How could you use the exact opposite of what you're looking for to find it? So my whole thing is to see what you're not is the seeing of what I am. You know, I am that which is seeing what I'm not. That's the only way. If I look for it, I don't find it. If I see what I'm not, I am it. Yeah? And I believe the only possibility we have concerning this topic is to be it, really. I don't see how it can be any other way. There would have to be two of you to know it, yeah, and there isn't. So that wanting to know, if directed to knowing what you're not, has value. That drive to understand what you're not has value, yeah. That experience of what you're not is incredibly valuable. It will wean you off of what you're not addiction, I swear. If you can see that all your experiences have really been about what you're not. Yeah. So selfing is an activity. I humbly believe the mental state is in what Buddha said, the Four Noble Truths, which is this. There's a malaise or dissatisfaction. That's the basic atmosphere of human life, and it's caused by desire. Now, my belief is the desire is to become and unbecome, and that's what the mental state is in. It's always trying to become a self, and it's always trying to unbecome a self it doesn't want to be. So it wants to be a self that it isn't, and it wants to unbecome things that it believes it is, like a loser or unlovable and stuff like that. So it's always agitated in this desire to become and unbecome, because just like a desire to get something here and you don't, it usually causes you to buy a pint of Häagen-Dazs or something like that. There's reactions to it, yeah? An unfulfilled desire. Well, can you imagine if your whole basis of living was based on that agitation? It's like trying to get relaxation on those old massager beds in those cheap hotels. You put a 25, and all you got was shook up. It was really agitating, but demonstrates, oh, deep relaxation, but it wasn't. It's sort of like here, you're under like a dark weather front, yeah? The sun's there, but where the side you're on, it's blocked, and so and then someone says they paint the sun on it, and they start trying to convince you, you're feeling nourished, you're feeling this, but you're hoping it's true, but you're really not getting any sustenance, yeah? But if you change, how can a cloud, if the cloud can only block the sun off if you're here. If you're on the sun side, you see the clouds, but they can't block you off from the sun. If you're in the sense of what you truly are, you see everything that used to be able to obscure something from you, but it's not obscured anymore. So the selfing is an activity. It produces agitation, and it begets agitation. Yeah? And this first movement is the claim. So, and this is how I see it in English. If I put a word up here, money, health, relationships, everyone would have a meaning, triggered on what condition you think you're in. But I can change that whole word without changing any letter of it. Just putting the my in front of it. My money, my health, my relationship. It changes everything, yeah? So I want all of you to have a lot of money, but I don't want you to have any of my money. Yeah? The mind changes everything. That's our role here. We're dreaming here. And the dreaming is demonstrated in the mind. So a thought is a thought, but when it's your thought, it can ruin your vacation. Yeah? If you don't see it, you're going to be looking from it. Yeah? If you don't see it, see the mental state implied, something comes after. Now they're saying it's 7 seconds, so the brain decides to make a left or go right, yes? And then 7 seconds later, the narration is that you decided to make a left or a right. Yeah? So the brain is firing, and then there's the narration tries to catch up with it by claiming and saying, I'm the one who made the decision. Yeah? So the mental processes are always implying there's a you, but the mental process takes time. The conscious contact doesn't take time. Yeah? Then the conscious contact, 7 seconds after, the mental state arises and says, oh, I'm the one who's conscious. I'm the one who did it. I'm the one who's thinking it. I'm the one who blah, blah, blah. Yeah? So that which comes after implies it's before. And for that to take root, what's before has to seemingly be forgotten. Because it would be totally ludicrous to believe it if you were seeing it from the before. But it has to distract the seeing and cause you to believe you're the seer, which is an idea that comes after, and then it obscures, the seeing itself obscures itself from the seeing. And it double whammies it when you start looking for it from what you're not. You start looking for it from what you're not, then the seeing becomes really objectified and comes really after, and then you seek it in through a path. All the while being what you're looking for at every step of the way. Ramana Maharshi, like him or not, says a beautiful statement. This is it. This is the conception of the mental state, a presupposing of a non-existent thing, which is the body being existing. Yeah? Have you ever seen someone you know die? It happened with me. I was 9 years old. There was an Uncle Fred I met at all the relatives' parties. I liked him. He used to slip like $1 behind his back, and I'd take it. I liked him, and he died. And my mother took me to the funeral, and she says, do you want to say goodbye to Uncle Fred? Which I wasn't really into, but I said, all right. She brought me up to the casket, and I looked in, and I had a direct hit. That ain't Uncle Fred. Yeah? I was mistaking Uncle Fred for the body. The animation wasn't produced by the body, because there was the body and there was no animation. You know what I mean? It was, and I said, that ain't Uncle Fred. And now in hindsight, over time, I realized, because in a sense I was identified as a body, I saw the same thing I'm seeing in this situation, in that situation. I was mistaking the animation as the body. That's what's happening. And then here, it's a double whammy, because you'll go to the body to look for the animation. It's just like if the horse is in front of the cart, things will make sense. Yeah. You'll see it very clearly. Because that's the one quality that we are that can't be taken. It can't be, it never blinks. It's always available at all times right where you are. You were seeing just as good as you are now on your worst day. Yeah. I've seen quote-unquote terrible things. I've seen beautiful things. If my head's facing one way and my eyes are open, I'm going to see whatever's going on. There's no volition in it. Yeah. I don't understand how we're missing it, you know. So Wang Po goes, there's a presupposing of a non-existent thing that wants to get salvation for the non-existent thing. That's the rub, yeah? So there's a presupposing of a non-existent thing that wants to get salvation for the non-existent thing. Now, and you don't need to get some salvation from the non-existent thing because it's non-existent. Yeah? So there's a presupposing of a non-existent thing, so the animation gets mistaken for this, yeah? And now this wants to get salvation for itself. When the salvation is always available at all times, but we'll get to that. It says, if this is the condition, then your spiritual practices themselves are being used to reinforce the non-existent thing. How can they destroy the non-existent thing? There you have it. I mean, whammo. The fight's over, really. How can you get up after that? If you put that shoe on, doesn't it fit? Don't you have a sense that's what's been going on? That if you're into the spirituality, don't you have a sense that your own practices themselves are actually illuminating the non-existent thing, building it up? And the story is that they're meant to destroy it. I'm meant to, it's like when we were talking to my friend outside. You don't understand how misdirected we are. I remember I had trouble with my digestion for years. And I would do, I was looking at, I tried so many things. And then I found this stuff that was from Canada. I don't know, she told me the name of Bio or something. It came in like a little milk cart thing. And you buy 8 of them at Whole Foods for 48 bucks. And I drink it every week for a year. And I was thinking, I think I'm getting better. It was like thousands of dollars I'm buying it. So there was this place called Smoky Mountain Labs. You could send your shit there, basically. And they would check it out and see what was in your shit. And so I got the kit, and I wrote the application. Of course, everyone always checks off parasites, and stuff like that. And I sent it back. I get really excited, and the report comes back. And I'm reading it down, and I look at it, and it says, and because I put it, it was like 50 billion beneficial flora each bottle. So I had populated the intestinal world with like zillions of citizens, like beneficial flora, yeah? And then I look at the return, it says, signs of beneficial flora, 0.00. There's absolutely no sign of any beneficial flora. And I go, how could that be? I put 50 trillion citizens in there, not one of them. And they go, and then the next thing says, there's 2 bacteria that are in your body that love to eat in beneficial flora. So I was like a gourmet caterer to the freaking the bacteria, thinking all along, I'm doing good, I'm spending thousands of dollars, it must be working. My intention is solid, but totally misdirected. Yes? This is what's happening. You know, in nature, they have, the first one I ever used was a story of cordyceps, mushrooms. You ever hear of them? It's an interesting mushroom. And so, just like everything else, they're driven to reproduce. And so, but they have a sort of weak vehicle system to reproduce. They're spores, and they're hoping an animal will come by or a wind will blow it, and hopefully it will land where it can survive. So if they've taken this matter into their own hands, and so what they do is, the spore is intelligent in a way, it lands on an ant, drills into the ant, and jacks into its brain and tells the ant where would be the best place for the mushroom to go. It basically uses it as an Uber, an unsuspecting Uber. And then the ant takes it to the little dank area, and as soon as the mushroom arrives, it kills the ant and grows right out of the ant's head. Now, you think that's weird, but cordyceps has a lot of different species, and they all land on different insects. They target a certain insect. You don't think that's happening like to us? Some foreign installment has taken us, it's directing us to look for ourselves in the greatest way for it to grow unbelievably huge. Because you can't find what's looking. The only way you can arrive at what's looking is by seeing what you're not. By seeing what you're not, you'll find out what you are, but you can't find out what you are from what you're not. But by seeing what you're not, you find out what you are. Where most cases, we're trying to find out what we are from what we're not. If the shoe fits, you wear it. Yeah? If you don't, go ahead. This is an invitation. This isn't a draft. I'm just sharing something with you that was shared with me, and it stopped me in my tracks. I don't see, there isn't any wiggle room. Yeah? I don't think Huang Po was a sadist. He wasn't going to fuck up Steve. You know, Steve, you can't use the Buddha. He didn't see Steve. He saw the Buddha, a.k.a. Steve. And and there was a simple correction. Hey, Buddha, you can't use yourself to find yourself. All right, far out. Yeah. Saves you a lot of time and a lot of trouble. And then it's always available at all times, right where you are. And there's no requirement except the ones you hold dear. And they can be dropped, yeah. And then you never get gypped, ever. You're always here. Always. You never miss a thing, ever, again. You're just awake to being awake. And the only other option is to be asleep to being awake. But the fact is, the awakeness is a fact. Yeah? I find it allows this to travel lighter here. Because when I saw I wasn't this, the Urban Renewal Project was canceled. Yeah? I stopped working on the Toyota. The Toyota isn't going to be like a chariot of the gods. It isn't. And a Buddha, if it enters a Toyota, it's still going to look like a Toyota. Yeah? It doesn't become a Buddha car. Yes? This is what happens with these people. People are so anthropomorphic, we think you're going to show all the results of what's already so. It's not the case. You're going to go on just as you seem to be. Yeah? Non-duality can't be used as a skillful means. You're not going to get out of yourself with non-duality. It won't budge. Yeah? I remember I tried. I remember when I first heard it the first year, and I was living in Australia, and my girlfriend left, and she says, Paul, can you do the dishes while I'm gone? And she came back, the dishes weren't done. And she says, Paul, I thought you were going to do dishes. I said, well, there are no dishes. There is no Paul. And she said, fuck you, do the dishes. So it took a year or two, and I got over the immaturity. Yeah, and I let the message sit, and I didn't try to add on to it. I read a few books, saw a few people, and then I entertained it. I didn't fucking keep throwing fuck. It's like if you have an old car with a carburetor, and you've got a friend of yours there, and it breaks down, you know a little bit about cars. So what happens is you get him to go out, get the gas can, open the hood, yeah, and you're sitting there with the key, and you say, all right, put a couple of drops of gas in the carburetor, and then you keep turning it, and it usually fires. Once it fires, you don't keep pouring more gas in. The car drives now, yes? This is a simple invitation. You've been served. Entertain it. You don't have to keep throwing logs on it because it's self-firing. Give it a free. Have faith in mind, you know. And you'll become what you're looking for. You will. You'll find out what you are by realizing what you're not. And what you are can't be described. All it can be is lived, really, in a sense. Maybe expressed. So, yeah. We should go into questions, I guess. But I want to be clear. This mental state's ability to claim is something else. So it's like the Death Star in Star Wars, you know. It's shooting down all the fighter planes. Or like spiritual sperm, I like to use it. So this is like spiritual sperm. We throw a lot out, yeah, with the hopes that one will get through and get to the mother egg. And once it hits the mother egg and impregnates it with a possibility, and that possibility is I can be free from it. See? And then you'll realize you've been trying to be free as self most of your life. Yeah. And then that misdirected will be directed correctly. You'll see from what you're looking for instead of looking from what you're not to find what you're looking for. Yeah, yeah. And the correction will be obvious. You'll be your own freaking scripture. You'll be your own authority. Yeah, you'll know prior to knowing. Yeah, cool. There's a thing called toxo. You've heard this one? It's another parasite. It's in about 20% of human brains. It's dormant though, but it also has the same dilemma. It wants to reproduce, but in this case, it can only reproduce in the stomach of cats. Now talk about you're having a hard time getting a date. Can you imagine this? This freaking thing is in some fucking mammal, and it has to get out of that mammal to the cat's belly. Can't, doesn't even have legs. It has to depend on the host completely. So what it does, it finds itself in a lot of rats and mice. Again, it jacks into the mouse head, and says, hey, when you see a cat, run right up to it. And they have videos of it, it's amazing. These 4 cats hang out around noonday, and a rat just saunters over and starts fucking with it. And then as soon as they eat the rat, the fucking toxo gets to the stomach and then reproduces. You don't think we're being taken over? Constantly being taken over. Yeah?
That's why a cat was licking my head.
What?
A cat was licking my head. That must have been why.
See, if there's a sense of like you're wholly, there's an integrity, there isn't. Yeah, there isn't. Things are taking us over all the time. You ever see the Wheel of Life in Tibetan Buddhism? Simple tool teaching. It explains what's happening here somewhat. It has the realms people go to, and it's held by the god of death. Yeah, but the important part is the hub, where it shows these 3 animals: a rooster, a pig, and a snake, and they represent envy, malice, and greed, which is blowing the wheel of life. So in a sense, there isn't anyone who's greedy, but there's a lot of greed being expressed through people. Yes. There's a lot of mental winds blowing constantly that are coming through us, and we're really in an expression. We're a culmination of a lot of things. We're not a source of anything. Yeah? We're an effect, basically. So, one thing about these ideas of parasites and stuff, the only thing that power respects is greater power, and to be taken over by light. And be that light you're taken over, it produces an immunity. Yeah? And one of the things it produces an immunity to what's not happening, which is incredible. Because I find most people, what they're suffering from is what's not happening. Yeah? If your Saturday is ruined, it's never rarely done by this Saturday. It's done by last week or next week. And no one's seeing the incredible, miraculous ability that's being demonstrated. Like Jesus supposedly brought a man back to life, Lazarus, but at least Lazarus had been alive. We're making shit out of nothing all day. If you really look at it, no dog is ruining its Saturday by thinking about next Saturday. You know? None. But us, we are what's happening. And if we entertain what's not happening, it will seem to be happening. And that's what's going on. And most people's idea of fear isn't fear at all, it's mental anxiety. It's not fear. Fear is a valid emotion, arises when you're under an apparent threat. Anxiety is like a mimicking of that physiological effect of fear, but some people are getting buzzed like 80 times a day. This is beautiful because if you see it's not happening, what more response is there? If what's happening starts to respond to what's not happening, it gives it the sense of it's happening. You see? I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and I was going to specialize on what's not happening, and people would come expecting an hour meeting, and they'd come in and they go start bitching about what's not happening. I say, Mr. Smith, that's not happening. See you next week. I'd work one day. I'd have like 60 patients. Because really, that is the appropriate response. It's not happening. Why? You can't get out of an imaginary place. Have you ever entertained that where you are may be imaginary? And then the response, if you saw it as possibly so, you wouldn't do anything, then everything would change? Wouldn't that imply the role you have here? Like the Course in Miracles says, hey, you and I are the dreaming of the dreaming. We forget that we're dreaming, and I believe how that seems to happen is you become identified as the dreamt. Yeah. Because if you can perceive this ain't what's perceiving. Yeah. So you and I, the dreaming of the dreaming, we forget that we're dreaming, so there's a condition that makes it seem to be so, and then in that condition, we give everything we're dreaming the ability to affect us. So you take yourself to be the thinker of the thoughts, and then the thoughts can own you. You own the feelings, and then the feelings own you. You own an action, and then the action owns you. I hope I've gotten across. It's just all about direction. It's the same energy. It's just being misdirected. You're looking for what can't be found. And what happens, in my own sense, an acceptance flooded into my life, and I wasn't in argument with things anymore. And in a sense, it boiled down to a statement in recovery: don't take yourself so seriously. You can't take self more serious than being identified as it. No freaking way. And if you catch yourself in the act of being identified as it, the act of being identified as it can culminate, to tell you the truth. Yeah? Because how it culminates, it presupposes it's already so. It can't make it so, but it presupposes it's already so. Just like when the thought system is thinking about us, it pictures us as a body. Yeah? When you're remembered 5 years ago, you're remembered as a body. That's the only way you can be remembered. You can't be remembered as spirit. You're remembered as a body. Yeah? So the mental processes, because they're not generating a light unto themselves, it has to be remembered. So you're remembered as a body, and when you're worrying about you in the future, you're worrying about you as a body, which is another form of remembrance. So you remember self by picturing it in the past. The thought system pictures it in the past and pictures it in the future. So it goes, I was Paul, I definitely will be Paul, therefore I am Paul. It can't go to therefore I am Paul, because it isn't. It goes there, I was and I will be, therefore I am. It's a heist. It's all it is. And you're in cahoots with it. Seriously. If you follow the arm of the burglar, it's you. Yeah. And then if you like this message, there's tons of YouTube, entertain it and see what happens. And you can't return nothing, so there's no warranty. And you'll get nothing if you try to return it. And then you have a simple invitation. But you see the difference. I went to talks where they talked about, let's say we sat here for 3 days and chanted, I'm not a body. What would be doing that but a body? What wants to get out of the feeling of being a body? A body. Spirit doesn't. The body wants to get out of a body. The brain, producing a sense of self, wants to get out of the body. It doesn't like it. It doesn't like its limitations. It's what's chanting. So if a body is chanting, I'm not a body, what's being reinforced? The body. 1 hour, 3 days, 50 years. It doesn't matter. That's it. That's how it goes. That's why in the writings of Ramana, he talks about it as the problem. He's attempting to say, before the ship goes off on the journey, something's wrong with the fucking crew. Yes? There's an crazy captain up there somewhere, and it may be you. So a presupposing means the supposing is presupposing. So when it's supposed, it implies it was before, you see? Conscious contact happens. The mental state happens in conscious contact after, you know, it's time-based. Then it supposes that there's a non-existent thing that's existing. But that supposing is presupposed, so then you feel like you're the one who's been supposing it. You see it? This is what happened. People call me, oh, Paul, I really like that idea of selfing, and I want to tell you I've been selfing all day. And I go, that's not the selfing. It's the feeling of the one who's selfing all day is the selfing. Or, I want to, you know, selfing's driving me crazy. That's not selfing. It's the one that's being crazy. That's the selfing. That's what's being implied is the one. And it's not ego, because people think they have an ego and then they lose an ego. What is that which has it and loses it? That's selfing. It's that action, it's the false authorship, the false ownership that's just assumed and implied all day. And then you're in that hypnotic trance because you're listening to the thought system. Yeah? And the thought system's constantly telling you that you have a lot of shit to do with shit you have nothing to do with. I used one of the oldest examples for me. I went to New York to give a talk. I hadn't been there a while. And a guy who knew me came in and says, oh, Paul, you're growing your hair. Because my hair was longer. I said, oh yeah, I'm growing my hair. Doing a pretty good job. And he was balding. I said, you're not doing well. And I said, why don't you join my hair growing group? We meet every Saturday for 3 hours, and it actually extends it quicker. And I could have gone on. I'm very proud of it, and this and that. But basically, all I do is not cut it. I don't grow the hair. Yeah, but the language sounds like I have a lot to do with it. I'm growing my hair. You know, really? Let me see. Watch. But the same thing, I hurt my knee in the water surfing. And when I would tell people, I hurt my knee in the water. It sounded like I went out there with a hammer. But no, my knee went out and I became aware of it, basically. But you don't say it that way. You basically put yourself in front, and then you have something to do with a lot of shit that comes after it. You have nothing to do with it. See it. The burden is being produced all day. You've been on the train so long, like, you could have taken the fucking thing off, but it's this that's the baggage. You forget this is always the carry-on. On all your trips, you always fucking bring the idea of being you. And it will outshine everything you freaking do. It will. And it's even more slippery with a spiritual you. It's really slimy. It can go on for 40 years. And no one even notices it. Yeah. Yes?
So how do you explain when people get the call to start to listen to this kind of a message as opposed to continue with their spiritual practice and seek and seek and seek? And at some point, you start to wake up to the fact that this isn't helpful. I mean, this isn't getting me what I want or whatever. But something occurs, a readiness button or whatever you want to call it, that allows a person to start to listen in a different way.
Well, what's beautiful, the failed system, like this says in the Course in Miracles, what can a failed system show you? It's failed. That's incredibly valuable. And I believe we're the essence of value, so nothing is wasted. Just like what happened with me in recovery, the last 5 years when I was out there, even longer, I could see no value in my life at all. I was just living off of people, ramming, really none at all. And then I came into recovery, and the program Recovery used that history and put it to great use and incredible value. So I believe what we are, where if you're there, there's a value in it. Yeah. And there's a beautiful statement in the Course that says, hey, you and I are the dreaming of this dream. And we're going to dream ourselves out of the dream. So you can construe this as an event in the dream, of dreaming ourselves out of the dream. And as we do, the dream will get happier. That's a pretty nice little statement, eh? So there's no need to get out of anything. How can you get out of an imaginary place? Yeah. The way you get out of here is completely being here. And you can't completely be here addicted to the mental state. It's impossible, seemingly, yeah, because you're agitated. In Buddhism, there's an essence where they say, you know, the essence of mind is emptiness, its nature is reflective, and then its manifestation's energy. So here, all there is energy. It can't be created nor destroyed. This is like mind manifesting or dreaming, yeah? And its nature is reflective. So right now, we're reflecting a dream that's being projected, and we're taking ourselves to be a thing in the dream and then perceiving it as if it's real. That's the movie, yeah? We're the projector, we're the audience, we're the director, we're the whole shebang going on.
Just seems like at some point, it seems like a choice was made. And so you
For who?
talked
For
about
who?
that 7-second delay between the thought of the choice and the actual making of the choice. I just wonder if that still applies to the person becoming ready to hear something that maybe they weren't ready to hear before.
Well, the thing is, what I'm talking to has heard it already. It may percolate for a while, it may not come out the way you think, but it's going to show effects. Because every time you impress, there's going to be an expression, and you've been impressed with a spiritual subpoena. I've watched it thousands of times. I have total faith in mine. I do. I'm not a believer in intensives or retreats because I think today's intense enough, you know, like every day. Why would you want to go to an intensive? It just seems like it's a little intense from 8 in the morning on when you wake up. And a retreat, I mean, to me, it can become beating a dead horse. Now, it will make this better, and I'm all for that, but I don't like it when, because see, that act of claiming will claim meditation to provoke a meditator. It will. It doesn't have any, there's no electrified fence around spiritual practice. It will claim everything and use it to point out that you're the one doing it. So what you think, it says it very clearly, if this presupposing or non-existent thing is in place, then even your spiritual practices themselves will be used to reinforce the non-existent thing. How can it destroy it? That's a shoe. Let's see if it fit. It fit when I put it on. It just explained that I, quote unquote, seem to have been doing that for many, many years. And yeah, yes.
So what would you say then about, like, say a Veda Vedantic guru who's saying in mantras it says, which is all based on non-duality, in mantras it says you must sit close to the teacher to learn the lessons of the non-duality, which seems so insane to me because you don't need to do anything, like you're saying, to be there. And how can the guru be there even if there is no non-duality?
Yes.
That's what all of those schools are about. Like,
Well, they're schools.
but it's not on a lesson book either. They're like, this isn't actually anything you're learning. You have to be close to the teacher to get it, is what they say.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe that.
Me neither.
No.
I don't know how to make sense of that either.
See, for me, I believe people are inviters. I'm inviting you. I'm like a mailman. I don't want to go in and read the letter with you. I just delivered the letter.
Which makes sense, but in these cases it's like, I see what you're doing, that's how it should be, and then I see they're saying you have to stay close to the teacher though. Because if you go out in collective consciousness not ready, you get sucked back into this other.
Yeah, but who gets sucked back into it?
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? If they believe that's true, for them it's true. Yeah? I don't know. But this is more like, if this was a Buddhist sect, it would be laying down Buddhism. That's what I would direct everyone to do. Just lay down a while. Yeah? Don't call it anything. Just lay down. Why does it have to have a name? If you sit quietly, does it have to be called meditation? Just sit there and don't note anything and just go to the next thing. And basically you live, or in a sense, memory-free, because I find a lot of times memory is a replacement for being here. To tell you the truth, people I remember once I was in a famous place in Burma called Pagan. It's got all these ancient temples on this big plain, dry, arid plain near the Irrawaddy River. And I was there, and you rent a bicycle and you go like there was like 5,000 temples that were built for between 9 and 1200 BC. Beautiful murals, a true wonder of the world. And then one day we were there and we used to sit to watch the sun go down. You could see all the spires, you know. And we see this big plume of dust, and there's all this dust, and there's a big bus coming. And it just so happens comes to the temple we're sitting at, and then all these people pulls up, all these people get out, walk right up to the temple, turn towards the bus driver takes a picture, and they get back in the bus. Now, they have the picture to say they were at that temple, but were they really at the temple? Yeah? They can prove they were there. And I think a lot of times, because we feel like we're not really alive, we try to replace it with pictures that prove we were alive. If you're living, you don't really need much memory, to tell you the truth. If you're here, you don't have to have a memory of here. Because here, you never go from here. It's all here with just different furniture, basically. Yeah? Cameo appearances and stuff like that, but the here never changes. Yeah, it's an ongoing, it's got a mural pasted over it, but it's, the canvas is always much larger than the mural. You know, it's always holding the space. And it's like a movie theater with the screen. How many times have you heard people after the movie clap for the screen? Very rarely, but without the screen there'd be no movie. Yes, that's us. Yeah. I hope you walk out here feeling okay and maybe have a double latte. You know, maybe 3 scoops of ice cream or something. See what happens. See if the roof falls in. Yeah. I'm not saying do not do things. I'm saying be aware that something's busy while you're doing things. Something is doing something while you're doing something. Yeah? The mental states are busily doing something, which is they're claiming whatever they've been brought into contact with by you, and they're claiming to paste another little tile on the imaginary image of Paul. That's what they're busily at. There's nothing right or wrong with it. That's how they've organized this thing. They've got to have, see, for you, thoughts need objects. See, thoughts are always about, aren't they? When you say, I thought about, it's always about, and it's always about, even, it's an object called topic, but it's, thoughts coagulate around an imaginary object. You can be thought about as a body, you can't be thought about as what you are. You're prior to thought. The thought is like an add-on that's taking the place of what comes before. And to me, I see it as a failed GPS. It has very old maps. It promises everything. It's like, can you imagine if you were at a furniture store and someone ordered a couch on Wednesday, let's say March 20th, and then the 22nd they haven't gotten it and they keep calling you, and by the 24th, oh, we lost the couch, and by the way, you're never going to get the couch. You would have, that furniture business would be closed down. But look at the spiritual business. They got you, you know, fucking shopping for lifetimes. You want to just have a simple awakening, it may take, you have to first purify. Who's going to say when you're purified, you're taking a shit every day? You know what I mean? You're a disposal unit. How are you going to be pure? It's insane to me. Why? And it doesn't matter, maybe they're right, but who gives a fuck? Don't you want to feel it at an ease and comfort right now in your own freaking skin without having to jump through hoops to convince yourself that you're okay? Why do you want to live having all the possibilities stretched in time where the okayness is dropped, but I will be okay? Or a memory, I was once okay. Fuck it. Just, it's all right now. If this gives you the liberty to be okay today, it's worth 500 scriptures, man. I've done my job. Yeah.
Now, Paul has a different type of a foreign installment taken over you, or is it a different foreign installment, or is it for you, for what's happening with you?
I have no idea, but I don't care. Right now, I don't know. This is all empty to me. I never get out of anything out of these, ever. That's the beauty of it. It's just like totally neutral. Nothing happens here in the talks. And when I leave, it's hard to explain. It really is. It's a seed assignment. That's all it is.
But it's an automatic, spontaneous thing. It's automatic, spontaneous that's happening.
Well, yeah. But all there is happening. It never culminates to something happened. It's always happening. Everything is happening. Everything is dreaming. There's no dream. There's no object called dream. There's dreaming. We're in it now. We're never not in it. As long as this is appearing, this is the dreaming. There's no point where you can leave the dreaming and sit on a perch and then observe the dreaming. That's dreaming. It's all encompassed. You never left the river. Yeah. I just don't see the simplicity of it. If there's a part of an ocean appears as a wave and then becomes identified as that wave, and then wants to know the ocean, wants to have an experience in the ocean, but all that wanting is determined that it's a wave, yeah? Yeah. So, and then it could even be me going to meetings where people are bitching about being dry, yeah? And the wave wants to know the ocean. It can't imagine that it is the ocean because it's imagining everything from being a wave. What would be the direct message? You're not a wave. There would be no talking to the wave about the ocean. It would just infuriate it even more. You would talk to the wave about a wave with the hopes that the wave would go, wow, am I a wave? And then put ocean, yes? And then you'd realize you're totally drenched. It's like that old Zen statement, I'm like a man standing by the river selling water. Yeah, it's that absurd.
Well, it's just that if there's only dreaming, then any dream I've had, I wasn't in control of the dream. So, I mean, everything would have to be a legitimate expression of what's happening.
Well, legitimate or not, they're all legitimate.
As in no choice in it.
Well, see, if there's a feeling of you, there's a feeling of choice. Why do you want to convince? You're not going to change the source code of the Toyota. Because when you go to the cafe and you order a mocha instead of a latte, it sure seems like you had a choice, yeah? And even Ramana says, if there's a sense of individualization as a body, there's free will. There's an appearance of free will. Why? You're convincing the wrong fucking thing. Why do you want to convince that is totally programmed not to get it for it to get it? Just move on. Yeah. Move on. I mean, literally, has that ever worked for you? You feel like you have free will, don't you?
No.
No? You don't?
Well, it seems like it, but I never get the outcome, so it feels
Well,
like
yeah,
that.
see, but then there's a feeling about that that's sort of a bummer because you really feel like you did have free will, and it didn't, but it's not working, so to
It
speak.
feels like a compulsion. It feels like you don't have a choice.
Yeah, and something that believes it has a choice, that irritates it, yes? So the built-in, the primary code of the body computerized thing is that you have free will. Why send the body to try to short-circuit the source code of the body? Remember, that which wants to get out of the body is the body identification. Yeah? That which finds fault here isn't that which is here. It's that which isn't there and then. You think it should be better or, you know, whatever. There's all disagreement. Nothing nothing that's coming up on the stage is on it. It's always like wanting to move it right off. Haven't you ever had a feeling that was nagging? And once you finally gave it its 5 seconds on the stage, something occurred. Instead of trying to keep it off the stage, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. If you don't want to feel like a fraud, you'll feel like one thousands of times. It's okay, you know. There's like a blanket okayness comes over it, an acceptance that you couldn't generate because the mental state has an agenda. It has an agenda with satsang. It wants to become a non-self as a self. It's looking for an advantage by entertaining non-duality. That's why I never speak to that. Because if you want to get something out of non-duality, that's not it. Non-duality is a fact. That's all it is. It's a negation of something that's been taken to be a fact, which is the subject-object continuum here. It's just saying it's not so. It doesn't say what is so, because it's talking to what is so. It's trying to say, hey, what is so, this ain't so. So it's all purely negation. It doesn't have to affirm. The affirmation is what we are. We are already the affirming. There doesn't have to be a declaration. We are the declaration. You see what you're not. What sees what it's not. It doesn't suddenly go and then look for what it is. That's what it is. It's seeing what it's not. That's it. No more. There's not a second order that comes from the master committee. It's just this. You see what you're not, and that's the finding out of what you are. Yeah? What you're not continues to appear, but it's not taken as seriously. Yes. And for me, like before, earlier in my life, my headstream was like CNN News, you know? Very dire forecast. Now it's like Comedy Central, basically. I'm in a huge comedy skit all day. I'm just fucking, it's hilarious how it sees. Its form of looking is unfucking believable. It is so myopic. It's just unbelievable. It's hilarious, really. It really is, you know.
So would you say it's like perspective then? Like if some people seem to have like lots of bad things happening to them, etc., it's really just a perspective.
Of course. If you saw a situation from here or from here, it's quite different, yes? If here's the aperture, which is the basic one, the stock model here of self-centeredness. We're in an aperture where everything is seen as how it pertains to you. It's a very fucking small tunnel vision, right? And all the possibilities that are afforded to us are drenched in time. I may be okay, or I have memories when I once felt really good, yeah? But nothing is immediate, nothing is timeless. It's all stretched out and distorted, yes? And then what happens is, this is what happened to me. I went to a satsang, and I shared. I went to a lady, I said, wow, it's amazing. I came in here, and I was observing my mental states, my physical condition, but there was an assumption it was me, and now hearing you, I realized that was a mental state, yeah? The mental state was commenting on seeing other mental states, yeah? So the aperture went like this. And I saw a little more than I had been seeing. So then I walked out and did my thing for a while. And then suddenly I started, let's say it got larger, but the mental state arose and claimed to be the one that was there. And then, but I'd see it again. And it happened about 7 times. And then it happened the 100 monkey thing where I got it. I said, what? This is going to arise if you go into the farthest distance while you're here, to the infinity of it, your voice is going to go, I'm seeing it. It is. The head is going to go, hey, what a view. It is. I'm telling you. That's what's going to happen. You might as well get ready for it, because it is. And if you watch, remember, if you've had an epiphany, and then the epiphany ends, it usually coincides with the statement in your head, I'm having an epiphany. So as soon as you show up, that which was happening seems to be distorted. Yeah, doesn't, to me, these statements imply, yeah? They imply a whole lot. When I hear this, it doesn't start go, oh, and then a set period goes. It just opens up and goes off, yeah? To me, that's what I call entertaining. The greatest things that have triggered it, I always use as these talks. You can't use the Buddha, seek the Buddha. That creates an avalanche in me every freaking time I've ever heard it. Yeah? Or self can't get out of self. Freaking totally unbelievable. Yeah? And I believe it would be great, like those cigarette packs that have a warning, this could be dangerous to your health. This type of saying should be on every spiritual book, on the first page. You know what I mean? Like I would love to have like a spiritual public announcement on radios where someone's driving to a retreat and then, you are what you're looking for, pull over. I mean, literally, it would be so cool. You know what I mean? Because all that's needed is a little bit of, just the tiniest statement can be like 500 scriptures, yeah? Because you'll entertain it forever. It will just keep you know what I mean? It just goes on and on and on. And seeing, truly seeing, has never a lid on anything. It never stops. It's infinite. The seeing where thinking's happening now stops when it sees something. In seeing, there's no something to see. There's just seeing. Yeah? Yeah. And you have a sense of that space. What else is going to?
So if you're dealing with like a problem situation, then do you just think it's not really me, because it's universal, it's not personal? Or do you...
You don't have to think that, but maybe if it's new and the head's gonna... See, in my feeling, there's a difference between view and vision. View is an understanding and vision is seeing, yeah? View is helpful here to have an understanding, and then it can be used like a skillful means. But the view doesn't produce the seeing. The seeing infuses the view. Yeah, I would get prior to the understanding. Yeah, yeah. You're prior to the understanding. It's not a tool that which come after uses. You're prior to it. So the seeing will infuse the understanding. That's living, yeah? And then you're not doing anything like thinking. You're just living through things, yeah? Yeah. See, what's the best thing about a skillful means is when you don't need to use it. That's what I don't want spiritual tools. I want to not have to use spiritual tools, to tell you the truth. But this, yeah.
Well, I know you used the word surrender a couple of times as being from a 12-step background, and that's been a big portal to lots of opening for me. And I guess in a way it sounds like you're talking about it's kind of like surrender, kind of amplified 100 exponential times. Like it does seem a bit like surrender, but maybe what you're without the effort part. Not trying to surrender.
Yeah.
But.
Well, that's surrender. Like being convinced promotes surrendered. Yeah. If I had a prayer, I would pray for the ability to be convinced, to tell you the truth. And especially in recovery. If you were convinced that you're not managerial quality and that you're powerless over alcohol and drugs, it would change your whole life. So to me, surrender, the absolute surrender, is, as Ramana would say, who is there to surrender and to whom? That's a cool thing, but then there's lots of levels of surrender expressing it, yeah? And one of them is when you really see that you're fucked, in a sense, that you're listening to a failed GPS, and you can't stop listening to it as the way you are, yeah? So it's the GPS realizes it's a failed GPS, what's it gonna do? try to GPS itself out of it. That's failed also. It's a rude awakening. But I had that happen in a flash when I got sober. I got struck sober, and it was like a CNN news flash, just a headline, and it was, I'm fucked. And people who knew me knew I'd been fucked for quite a while, but it was news to me, really. It was. I mean, my muscle of denial was like Arnie Schwarzenegger's. I had been keeping a lot out, and then something just collapsed, the whole house of cards, and that sense has never changed in 30 years of recovery. So, and what was amazing is I've never had a strong thought or feeling to get loaded ever again. So I've been gifted the experience of the problem doesn't exist for me, which is a damn good solution. But I wouldn't stop there. That's just a demonstration of a lot more. That's the whole point. I believe we're shortchanging ourselves. If you could hear the message of, like, you can't use the Buddha, seek a Buddha, there's a whole lot more that comes with that. Yeah? If you could just have that one little skylight open, a lot downloads will occur that can change all the, like, the tints on the lenses, you know? It's how you see things will be cleared up without applying any liquid, you know, cleaner this way, but this way. Yeah, yeah. And there'll be no one there, or that which comes to claim it will be coming so late. It's sort of like, fuck, you know, the flag's been up for 4 months, and then you, I've got a flag. You know, you start seeing it's a real Johnny-come-lately. It's going to show up sooner or later, but it's already like, you know, the house is built already, so to speak. So, yeah. And then it's sort of like it bleeds out of you instead of you trying to put the painting on, yeah? Yeah, that's the power of a true message. It's living, and it triggers a lot, yes. And it's a gift that keeps on giving, yeah, because it's from you to you, really. So, simple, it is. Yeah, we just made up this charade so that it looks like you got it from somewhere, but it's from us to us, yeah, yeah. And if it's not for you, it's fine, you know, sure. I'd love to go to Peru and paint my face and do ayahuasca. You know, I could write blogs and sell some books and get a serpent tattoo and fucking dreadlock my hair and have incredible experiences. It would be great. But does it fundamentally change the basis of what's happening? I found for me, it's not the seed assignment for me, you know. So, because you know, experiences are fine, but they're limited in a way. And experiences will not shake the basis. The self is like mercury, the selfing. You know, when you break a thermostat or something, or a thermometer, and then it just regroups, selfing is like that. It will rise and claim anything that's ever happened to you. And once it gets its hand on it, it neuters it. It neuters it. It takes the livingness out of it and kills it in a way. And so now you have a lot of epiphanies, but you're a fucking total asshole right this second. You know what I mean? You've got a huge spiritual mantle with a lot of fucking big experiences, but it's not demonstrating as an ease and comfort. Now, what's the point of it all? Yeah.
But like, you talk about how the mercury sort of regroups and stuff happens. Do you find, my hesitant observation is that the act of talking about something that is perhaps beyond experience, that is the beautiful seeing, even just the pinhole glimpse of that, can be all closed and taken by the mind by talking about it?
It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, it's going to go on. It doesn't mean the heist completes its mission. It has to have you to do it. Yeah. So it's going to do what it does. It's going to tell a story that you did this and you did that. You're not, why, it's like that old story about the lady who saves a snake and feeds it with a little eye drop and cuts a little blanket out of a sock and brings it back to health, and then she's walking with it and the snake bites her and she goes, Mr. Snake, why did you bite me? And he goes, hey, I'm a snake. Yeah, well, the same thing. I think the mental state is parasitical in a lot of ways. You're not going to make it a house pet, really. You might as well see it's going to continue to do what it's doing. Yeah, it's going to keep trying to claim life that you're offering it. You know? Yeah.
So when that shit comes up, you just witness it. You just let it do its
Well,
thing.
you know,
You just play its
but you're always witnessing it. So
Yeah.
did you just witness it? No.
No, but when you realize that that's what's happening, when you step out of the mind, and you step back, and you really get into this witnessing role, or whatever, you just realize that you're not that. But you don't, there's nothing to resist. Even if it looks ugly, it just looks ugly. Oh, there it goes.
Yeah, but there'll be resistance. Not from you, but from what you're not. For sure. This is going to resist. It's going to do a lot of things. This is where people mistake. They attribute what they are to the attributes of this. And they think if this shows any fault or got angry, they exile themselves from the possibility of being what they're looking for. It's insane. Yeah, this is messy. Yeah? Drive in traffic with one of your masters, you'll see. Yeah. They get irritated, they get upset, they get angry, they get frustrated. There's no one there that gets frustrated, but frustration happens. Of course, this isn't a get out of jail free card. You're more here than ever, you feel more than ever. Yeah? Because a lot of the filters are off. You have a lot of sensations and feelings. Yeah, yeah. It's overwhelming data coming through.
It's challenging because you really want to be in a situation where you're wondering, do you really need to do something to take care of it? If you can see it from afar, well, it's just this. But then you actually have to deal with it, or you're not doing anything. So it's really the balance between almost like lethargic and not lethargic, but you know what I mean? Almost like.
But it finds its own way, and then intuition and stuff like that become more dominant than thought. Yeah, yeah. And then there's sudden flashes that have a lot more information than horizontal stories. Yeah, and then there's a shift of relying on something that's reliable than something that's unreliable. If you rely on something that's unreliable, you're setting up a condition of anxiety because you know it's unreliable. You know shit's going to hit the fan because it has. Yeah? But if you fell upon something that was reliable, it would show an ease and comfort. This would uncoil a little bit. Yeah. It's sort of like a rose bush that never blooms, and it's got self-centeredness, and it hates all the other rose bushes because they're blooming, and it's on itself all the fucking time, and it's trying to bloom. It can't make itself bloom, but if you just change the pot and put some new soil in, put some water, put it in the light, that rose bush that thinks it can never bloom will bloom. It's all based on conditions, yeah. This is an effect, it's not a cause. This is an effect.
Maybe I'm missing an analogy though, because it sounds to me like you take the pot and the rose, and isn't that what retreat is, or satsangs? Isn't that the light that would be used by those teachers to explain?
But that's the rose bush.
Yeah.
That's not the essence. See, we're the body. Yeah, retreats are great. Who doesn't want to go on a retreat, especially the ones they do now, because they're always in Costa Rica, never in Newark, New Jersey, never in Hoboken. They're in nice places with great food. They should just call them what they are. They're like spas. Literally, you go there and then you talk about nice things. It's great. We need all that. The body needs it, but it's not like meditation's great for blood pressure and shit. So there's nothing right or wrong with it. It's just, I believe it's important to see. I'm happy the heist was pointed out to me. I'd like to know if I'm getting fucked. I will. I don't know. Maybe it's better not to, but I'd like to know it. So, and for me, I heard these things, and they explained my whole life. These cryptic little statements, I saw that shoe fit. I had been trying to get out of self. See, this happened with me. This statement, this sentence in AA is huge because something really changed. Something had changed, and I used to teach courses in the big book. And there was this one chapter called How It Works that goes over how to do an inventory, yeah, and it's I believe it's mispresented how people are taught it. So it said, and tell me how this sentence sounds. It says, being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, is what has defeated us. We will now look at its selves, common manifestations, and then the next paragraph is resentment, and then it goes to fear, and it goes to harming other people in the pursuit of what you want, and you look at the sexual behavior of your past, yeah? And so in a sense, you're doing an inventory to see how self defeated you in life. You're not doing an inventory to see your resentments, your fears, because they're not really yours. They were manifested by self having a sway in your life through being identified as it, yes? See, the trippy thing with self, if you look at that, and these are just images. I don't believe it's a parasite. You want to have images to produce a sense of otherness because that's how it works. If you can see what you're not, the possibility of being free from it is there. If you see everything from what you're not, you'll be trying to be free as it. Yeah, and if that's the inherent bondage, then the trying to be free as it becomes another form of bondage. You see it? Yeah? So this is a simple correction right where the first coupling occurs. So if you see it, yeah? So here it says, being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, is what has defeated us. It separates the two. We're us and there's self. So let's call it a GPS or a parasitical movement or a demonic intelligence or whatever, yeah? So these things, so let's say it's called a hostile parasite. And let's say a big bug landed on me with big freaking teeth. If it landed on me, I'd knock it off in a second. After the 50th time, I'd still knock it off. So this hostile parasite needs a damn good strategy to convince the host to allow the parasite to live on the host, yeah? So what does it do? The parasite of these mental conditions, they convince the host that they're the host, yeah? So now it's talking as you to you in the thought system. So while you're listening to thoughts, it's using those thoughts, those broadcasts, it's jacking into them and using it to talk to you, but as you. Because if it talked to you as Stanley and you weren't Stanley, you would turn it off. You wouldn't fucking follow its little takes. But because it's you, you fall for it. Yeah? Yeah, it's as simple as you see it. So if you see it, so this is what happened. I read that sentence and I saw self as other, completely not me, let's say. And immediately a possibility that hadn't been available until that point became available which is I can be free from it. And that was eureka. And then as soon as that was stated, it revealed by explaining my whole life, I had been trying to be free as self since I was 6 years old. By reading science fiction, by doing this, by doing that, by drugs, spirituality, back to drugs, yes? It explained everything. And I finally, the misdirection was corrected. I stopped trying to be free as self, and I entertained being free from self. Not by entertaining that, but by seeing I'm not that. And by seeing I'm not that, I am the solution. I don't need to apply a solution, I am the solution. And I just see the problem from the solution. And from the solution, it's an activity that the solution is engaged in. And if you lose interest in the activity, the seeming hold it has on you gets weaker. It's that simple. If you're not interested in the thoughts, you will not have as much anxiety as you're having now when you're extremely interested in the thoughts. Yeah? This is what happens. So it's really all reverse engineering. You get relief, and then you know why the relief wasn't available. That's all that happens. It just explains everything to you. It's just like gravity. We'll end with this. People here today, they may have climbed a steep hill, right? And they're bitching about the hill or those stairs. But it's really gravity, yes? It's not the hill, it's gravity. You're going up against a force you don't see, and it's causing stress on the physicality. No one in any cafe in British Columbia are bitching about gravity. They're bitching about steps, oh, that ridge we climbed, whatever. Yeah? And then maybe there's a professor of gravity, you can go to a seminar, and he'll talk to you and tell you everything about gravity. Yeah? But the best, all you need to do to know about gravity is to go into an anti-gravity chamber. As soon as you were relieved of the effects of gravity, you would know what gravity was by its absence. That's exactly what it's like. You know that it's bondage of self by the freedom from it. You know it. You know they were all on the money when there's the relief. You have hope it's true, but the real being convinced is when the relief starts occurring, and then it explains completely with it doesn't come up 7 years later for debate. It's not like, oh, we're gonna revisit that. No, there's just completely, and for me, it turned into the last answer here in time, and that's a pretty good damn answer. And it negated any need for any other answer concerning this topic. And I haven't looked for radical non-duality or extreme turbo non-duality. Let's mix non-duality with some tantra, which wouldn't be bad. Something like this. But it's just sort of dog shit awareness. It's basically flat out being awake. You know, everyone is. It's not like, oh, you know, you're not getting a medal. Yeah. So, there you go. Any more questions? I think, oh, yes.
I was an alcoholic and a drug addict for many years. And when I was about 33, 34, on the cusp there, I had a spontaneous awakening, and the consciousness just threw off all the drugs and alcohol. It was just like the consciousness could see that it was barking up the wrong tree, and it was gone, and it was taken from me. And so in my experience, it's just been these moments of, like, I was an atheist, I wasn't a seeker at all, I was just a hedonist party animal and interested in, you know,
doing hedonist party animal.
All the fun stuff. And then it just, then this love and this intelligence awoke, and it threw everything off. But what I find happens then, the little self, the ego, tries to then earn grace by being perfect. Like, you receive grace and then you work and scramble to try and earn grace, and then you realize it's completely futile. The harder you try to be perfect or you try to earn it, the more you realize what kind of a scoundrel you are. And then the grace comes again. So it seems like the whole thing is really, well, the consciousness uses these body minds to forget itself, and then in seeing what it's not, it remembers itself. So we're the instrument of forgetting and remembering. And there's nothing really that we can do about it as a separate person.
Yes,
Yeah,
well said.
That's been my experience. But
You
I'm
could have
still
talked
trying.
here and saved an hour and 40 minutes. You could have come up and said that and saved an hour and 40 minutes.
I'm still going to continue to earn it because I can't even stop the resistance or the seeking. Like, that's just happening.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a deep thing of, like, while that's going on, there's still consciousness becoming more aware of itself.
Yeah, that's cool.
But it's a relief to hear somebody in layman's terms say, like, give up on all this spiritual nicey bullshit and all this trying to perfect yourself and all of that sort of stuff, because so much of it is just a big money maker, a business for people, and it's exhausting, and it really doesn't get you to what we really want as quickly as possible. And I think that's all it's all about, saving time when you're at this neck of the woods. And I think everybody here is probably interested in saving time now.
Yeah.
Judging by all the gray hair in the room. No.
Well, that's what the Course would say. If you're reading the Course at this moment, one of the main objectives of it is to save you time.
I have read a little bit of the Course. I did find it very wordy and convoluted, though, and it basically, to me, is the same as the teachings of Ramana Maharshi and the non-dual teachings, but it just seems to, for me, it pulled me more into my mind. It actually made the problem worse in a way until it broke me, until then I would give up and throw
That maybe
it and
it's
say,
intent,
"This,"
yeah.
you know.
Maybe it's intent.
Which is the point of the book, you know. I don't want to read it though. Yeah.
It's a tough one to teach because it is wordy and stuff. So I'd much rather get like the Cliff Notes.
Would you recommend?
I don't mean, but whatever resonates with you. I mean, a few things resonate with me, but you know, I have a lot of. I like old Zen, Chinese Zen. I like Huang Po. I recommend that, The Teachings of Huang Po. It's a very old book. You can get it for about $2 maybe on the internet by John Blofeld. I think that's pretty direct. But you know, whatever. The thing is, you know, let's say my friend knew Carlos Castaneda, you know, and a lot of people said he's bogus, whatever, but it doesn't matter because it's mind that's going to make the value of what it's doing, yeah? So it's never the hose, it's the water, yeah? So everyone can find fault with the hoses, but it's the water, and if it quenches something in you, far out. It's a damn good job the hose did, yeah? But it's not the hose's job. Yes, same thing like with enlightenment and everything. There's no one enlightened, but enlightenment comes through, yeah? I've seen people, their first day of sobriety, that were the wisest shit came out of them. They had no idea what they were even saying. So, you know, I believe we as mind precede everything, and therefore, real, you know, what we can say this has no value, but it can be given value by mind. Mind is, you know, everything. So, I don't have any judgment on who or what. If it worked for you, far out. But it's nice to know when maybe it's time to put it down. Yeah. I think that's the art of living, is when to put down things. So I know a lot of people in recovery, like I used to work with a guy, I'd have to tell him stop doing inventories because they was just constantly, minutely going everything, and he wasn't enjoying sobriety. You know, it was more obsession with self in his recovery than when he was out there using.
Having to confess things all the time.
Yeah. You know, it's about freedom, basically, in a sense. And so.
It's funny, you know, the other day I got a big giant dog jumped up and nearly tore my cheek.
Wow, I see that.
And it's funny how my mind then kicks in and starts going, I wonder what I did to deserve that, or I wonder what past life karma is being played out or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, and it's, but if you go into it, it's much more unknowable than that. You just can't nail it down to a linear type of thing.
You know, it never satiates you anyway, does it? You know, it's like being a professor of holes, yet you keep falling in them. What's the point of the knowledge? You know what I mean? Really? Yeah, you just want to be, you know.
Also, then you're just setting goals, I find too. Like you're setting goals, like you read the book and you do the book and you're doing all this stuff, but then you're just living in the future, which is exactly not what we're supposed to, like that. You know, it's supposed to, should be used that word, but we're not living presently.
Well, you are.
Trying to be something goal oriented, which is a future goal.
I set a goal that we'd be out of here by 3, and it's 3:10 now. Failed already. But you know, that which is the setting of a goal is being used to imply there's a someone. It's not you.
Right.
Set a goal, not set goal. That's like a diversion. The mental state wants to divert your attention down dead-end streets. Yeah, just you know, just see it. It throws a bone and wants you to fetch, basically. And it's basically fishing most of the time. It's just trawling, tries to throw something in there to catch, and then it knows with the slightest little movement that, oh, it's a little believable, then it piles on. You know, like if you have a hernia and then you look up hernia belts, and then the next day on Facebook there's hernia belts advertisements. They start downloading. This is what the head is like. If you give it even a little, oh, that could be, it just starts downloading. Yeah, it's a trippy. But the point is, all that movement doesn't. I'll end with this one. You know, this I love the sky analogy in this, and in. So there's the sky. Like today, it's a clear sky, and then a lot of clouds appear in the sky, but not any of them leave a trace on the sky, do they? A lot of planes move through the sky. You never hear them calling the terminal saying, I ran into a big chunk of sky. Yeah, there's 4th of July explosions every day, don't rip the sky open. Yeah, so tons of shit happens in the sky, and the sky allows them to appear, but none of them affect the sky. That's what mind is like, you know, mind. So we're seeing a lot of the mental fireworks, yeah? And sometimes by our seeing them, they trigger this presupposing. So immediately you believe you're the one who had the goals, and now you're the one who needs not to have. You know, it just sets off. It's like putting. It's like the trail of a shooting star, you know, or a comet. It's all fucking narration. Yet it's happening in the sky that you are, and it's leaving absolutely no effect, none whatsoever.
I offer a poem.
Hmm?
I'd like to offer a poem.
A poem?
A poem. You made reference.
Oh, a bone. Oh, all right.
The mind is nothing more than that which has a reservation when you at the restaurant at the end of the universe.
Let's say that again. The mind is nothing but.
The mind is nothing more than that which has a reservation at the restaurant at the end of the universe.
I think we should end with that one.
No,
We have a restoration at a Thai restaurant.
I have no reason, but I don't want to keep anyone else with a question, but I think a chance to introduce you. And I just wanted to say, if you're looking for more like writing, like Paul has a book that he's recently published called Escape to Everywhere. It's on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca for us Canadians, both. And I read 24 reviews. Every single review is a 5-star. I haven't read it myself, but it looks good. It'd be mine.
I paid every one of those people. No, we have 2 books. There's the non-linear book is Escape to Everywhere.
Yeah.
We have 2 of them, and then there's a book on recovery, which is Under Arrest, which is a more helpful book.
Okay. All right, and that's
And then I have 4 or 5 Zen Bitch Slap shirts, so you'll have to fight for them. Collector's item. I'm petrified to bring anything into Canada, because I go through Toronto and they used to stop me at the customs.
Talk Shannon right at the end of this thing, and then Shannon, did you have?
I was just going to say, thanks for the donations. We're helping to fund Paul's travel to get here, gas money and stuff, and it's much appreciated. There's if you didn't have cash or whatever, there's also a PayPal thing on his website as well. Tomorrow, we have another event scheduled at the Krishnamurti Center. You're welcome to come out. It's out in Machosen. It's beautiful grounds. We go for a walk right on the ocean. And it's on the poster on the door, so just maybe grab a poster on your way out if you don't have the address. And love to see you. And thanks again to Paul for making this happen. It's really wonderful to have you here for the first time in Victoria, and hope you can do it again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, appreciate it. All right, that's it. All right.